Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LFC Transfer Room. My name is Louis, and we are here today for another match preview, the penultimate Premier League game of the season, and is Liverpool travelling to St Mary's to face Southampton in our final away game of the season. I'm joined today by Drew, Jay, and Neil. Drew, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. As I was telling you guys before the stream started, I'm still celebrating.
Yeah, of course. If you didn't know, or if you haven't been here, we won the FA Cup on Saturday, and it was a good day. It was a nice day to be a Liverpool fan. Jay, how are you doing?
Very good, mate. Similar to Drew. I wish the game was at the end of the season, to be honest, but looking forward to the Villa game tomorrow. Put a bit of pressure on City.
Yeah. We were talking about it on the day. It does feel, even if it was just at the end of the season, it would have a little bit more magic to it. But when you win it, the magic suddenly does feel like it comes rushing back to the cup. And Neil, how are you doing? You said before we came on you were actually at the Man City West Ham game yesterday. How was that?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, it was brilliant. The atmosphere was good. I walked outside at 2-0 and the place was rocking, and I was going through all the different permutations about goal difference, and I think it was down to 5 at that point, and could we get 3 or 4 at Southampton and then have a real chance? But obviously the second half changed the game, but we're still in there with a shout. And in some ways, we haven't got to go chasing goal difference tomorrow, have we? So, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you want to consider that a weight off of our back, that unless we draw the final game and Man City lose, then it won't come down to goal difference, and that does seem incredibly unlikely, doesn't it? So, yeah. At least we won't lose on goal difference. We might lose by a point, which would be terrible. But I feel like goal difference would just be that little bit more of a kick in the teeth, wouldn't it? Yeah. On these previews, on these post-match reactions, I do tend to get a little bit in dreamland and a bit hypothetical. So I'm going to make sure we try and stay grounded on Southampton and Southampton alone. We're going to try and avoid any talk of final day drama or any talk of Steven Gerrard until this result is in the bag. So Ralph Hasenhüttl and Southampton. I mean, Drew, coming to you first, they're not in the best form. I mean, I'll go through their fixtures in a moment, but if the season went on much longer, they probably could be heading towards a relegation battle. But as it is the 37th game of their season, they are safe. They're not going to push for top half of the table. This is a dead rubber game for them, surely.
Normally I'd say yeah, but isn't this their last home game as well? Maybe they've had their almost 10 days rest. Maybe give their fans something to at least take away for the summer. At least they'll show up. I don't expect them to waltz the game. I expect it to be a tough game. So they're a weird side too. They've been giant killers in the past, but they've also lost 9-0 in the past. 6 games have pretty much been losses, except for the 1-0 win against Arsenal, which upset them. But I think we'll expect a tough Southampton side, but I still back our quality regardless.
Yeah, Jay, Ralph Hasenhüttl in his press conference today, I believe it must have been, said that this is essentially Southampton's Champions League final, which is the feeling that I get from a lot of lower table sides this season and in the past. I mean, is that all talk? Could they, at this point in the season, they've really got nothing to aim for? Can you really, just as simple as that, summon up something big and put in a performance?
Like Drew said, it is the last home game of the season, so you would want to put a performance on for your fans for the last home game of the season. But I think Ralph Hasenhüttl's got a little bit of an obsession with Klopp anyway, because I think he cried obviously when he beat us last season, which made him look like an idiot, I thought. But I think for him it's sort of a reward to say he's beaten Jurgen Klopp or he's beaten Pep Guardiola, the top managers. I think for a smaller club, that's kind of like, not a trophy obviously, but it's kind of like a little reward, or something to egg them on, basically, to be able to say, oh, we beat Klopp, we beat Guardiola, we beat a big side. So I do think they'll be up for it, and especially with it being the last home game and the 10 days rest, which you've already mentioned as well.
Apologies, everybody who is in the live chat and watching. The video on our stream system was set to private, so I wasn't getting. I wondered where everybody was, but they are all here. So welcome, Jen, Hyla, Cout, and everybody else just getting involved. Thank you very much, as always, for your support. Please do like the video and please do subscribe. Neil, coming to you. Ralph Hasenhüttl, again, a fairly mediocre season, but you know, what do you make of Southampton this year? It's another season of intense mediocrity. I can't really remember what kind of summer they had, but was that their aim at the start of the season, just to stay safe again? Is it a disappointment? Is it a good season? I don't really know.
I think for Southampton as a club, and I don't want to be disrespectful to them in any way, but the first objective for them every season is to make sure that they're in the Premier League the season after. Now, the way the season's gone, I think will be a bit of a disappointment, because I think they're on about 40 points, and I think they got a lot of those points in kind of the first half of the season. And it's almost like they've got to a stage where, we're going to be safe, and dropped off a little bit. So I think their supporters will be a little bit disappointed. They've had a bad run of late. They did beat Arsenal. But I think, as I say, at the start of every season, the main objective is to secure survival. But the disappointment will be that they didn't kick on after, giving themselves a good platform early on.
Yeah, I mean, looking at those fixtures now, so previous game, 3-0 loss to Brentford, 2-1 loss to Palace, 2-2 draw with Brighton, 2-0 loss again to Burnley. Then, of course, that surprise win over Arsenal. But before that, they lost 6-0 to Chelsea and 4-1 to Man City. So, Drew, they're kind of it's a team of two potentials that we could face. Maybe they've got something in the bag. But again, Arsenal, they're a slightly different level to where we are right now, and to where Chelsea and Man City have been at times this season as well. So it's not even really. Would you be that worried about the Arsenal result? Is that something to look at and be particularly scared at? Whereas I would look at that Man City and the Chelsea one and think, well, actually, there are goals in this if we turn up, essentially.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not taking it lightly. I'd take this very seriously. We did just have 120 minutes in the legs for most of our players, or most of our starting 11, and it seems like Klopp's gonna name a much changed side for the match. And James Ward-Prowse on any set piece delivery is a huge threat. And the worst thing that could probably happen would be for them to get an early goal and have something to fight for, while we have tired legs and some of our bench starting. So it's definitely not a straightforward game. I expect a difficult match, but I do still back our players to overwhelm Southampton, whether or not it's a comfortable win in the end. I still think we'll get the win.
And in Jurgen Klopp's press conference, he mentioned about Ward-Prowse, actually, Jay, didn't he? He said, if there's one thing we've got to do today, apart from win, is not give away silly free kicks on the edge of our box, because he is someone. I mean, I think it's a bit far. He's been nominated for Player of the Season, where there's many other players who should be there ahead of him, but I guess that's English bias talking. I don't know. But that is something to be very wary of, isn't it? Because as Drew said, if whoever starts goes lunging in on someone early on to let them know that they're there, Ward-Prowse whacks in a free kick, and then suddenly we're chasing the game, aren't we?
100%, mate. Yeah, he's deadly at set pieces. I think he's not far off the record now for most free kick goals, to be honest. So that tells you everything about how good his delivery is. But it's not just his delivery; it's shooting on the goal, to be fair. So he's definitely a danger, and I think Milner will play tomorrow. So I hope he doesn't give away some of the stupid fouls that he tends to give away in the areas where Ward-Prowse is a danger. So I think that's one of their main threats, to be honest, yeah.
Yeah, I've just searched that up now. So it's David Beckham who holds the record with 18 goals from free kicks. But in third place is Cristiano Ronaldo with 12, and in fourth is Thierry Henry with 12 as well. But in second is James Ward-Prowse with 14. I mean, I know I just made a remark about him being nominated for Player of the Season, Neil, but that's not something to be laughed at, is it?
No, he's a very good player, to be fair to him. And I think the thing about, he's doing it in a side that has been, as you said, mediocre. They're going to finish in a mediocre position in the league, so it's even more impressive from that perspective. So no, he's a talented player. Whether he's underrated because he plays for Southampton, I think is probably a question. Because like you, when I saw the list of candidates for Premier League Player of the Season, I was surprised to see him on there. But when you look at the stats and stuff and what he has actually done, it backs up his nomination. So good player. It'd be interesting to see him go to a bigger club again. Not showing, I don't want to show Southampton any disrespect, but it'd be interesting to see how he would get on, at one of the bigger clubs, because a lot of the top managers speak very highly of him.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, everyone, thank you to everyone who is tuning in and watching. Please do like the video. And if you do happen to be new, please do consider subscribing as well for all your Liverpool content. Hyla makes a good point, which is what I wanted to talk about next. James Pearce in The Athletic, among others, expects 7 changes from the team that started the FA Cup final. So this is where things get interesting. I mean, Drew, we've spoken on other previews about potential changes, but this is off the back of playing 120 minutes not 2 days ago in a cup final. So we really do have to make quite seismic changes, you'd imagine. Who are you expecting? Although actually before that, Alisson. Some people have predicted that Queeve will start this game, Queeve Kelleher. I mean, I think that's got some legs to it because we saw Alisson in the first half. Maybe it was just a collision injury, but with such a massive Champions League final awaiting, is he the kind of player that we can take risks with against a team that we should beat anyway? I don't know. What sort of decision do you see being made there?
I think he'll play, to be honest. He said it was a knock, so it's not something like a muscle strain or a rolled ankle or anything that should keep him out. If it's just a bruise, he should play through that. I wouldn't want to chop and change at this stage of the season in a position like goalkeeper. And by his words, it seems like it's not a big deal at the end of the day. So I think he starts and just keep him in there and keep us. You definitely want our best players in the position if they're fit and available.
Couch says, definitely would love to see Minamino versus Southampton and definitely see Origi having a final run out as a red. Yeah, well, in the Champions League final, but we'll get onto that in a few days' time, I'm sure. So, Jay, coming to you about these potential changes. I mean, I would love to see Minamino at least get one more appearance before the summer, because I feel like this summer is the end of his Liverpool career, unfortunately. But when you look at Hyla's predicted lineup, his front three is Jota, Firmino, Diaz, and that just again exercises the actual depth that we do have. It's mental. I mean, for a lot of top 10 sides, that's an incredible starting front three, and that's like our B track almost. I mean, it's a testament to what we've done, and we've praised that many times. But would you be going for something similar, or would you even try and rest a Diaz or rest a Jota for somebody else?
I think I'd rest Diaz, yeah. I think Firmino, Jota, and arguably you could probably give Origi minutes in this type of game. Not to disrespect Southampton, but I think Origi can make enough of an impact in this game, whereas if we don't take the lead, you can bring him off for Diaz or Mane, or obviously I don't think Salah will make the bench, but I think you can take a little bit of a risk with that because, like I say, if you've still got Firmino and Jota in, that's still a really strong front two. with Origi in it as well. Would you mention Alisson as well? I think it's important he plays, by the way, because obviously Van Dijk's very unlikely to play. So with Ward-Prowse's delivery, not having Van Dijk there, I think it's important that you've got your keeper at the back just to be commanding and obviously bark the instructions out to the centre half. But yeah, I'd like to rest Diaz, to be honest. I want him to be as fresh as possible for the next game.
Absolutely. And Neil, Klopp again has spoken out about the fact that we'll have 5 substitutes next year. And in cup competitions, that's been essential to maintaining squad fitness, managing fatigue, etc. But regardless of that, 3 substitutes tomorrow. But that's still going to be key for us, isn't it? And if you start an Origi, that's not necessarily a disrespect because he can still get goals, can't he? And if as Jay said, if things don't work out, we could bring on a Diaz, we could bring on Firmino or whoever's picked on the bench. So the subs as well as the lineup tomorrow, more than ever, are going to be important, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think over recent weeks we've seen how important the substitutes can be. So the first game that sticks out in my mind is the Everton game, 0-0 after an hour. Diaz and Origi come on, and then within 20 minutes we're 2-0 up. And I think the game after, I can't remember what it was. Even the Villarreal semi-final as well. We brought Diaz on at half time, didn't we? And the game turned on its head. So absolutely, that's the thing. Everyone rants and raves about the starting lineup, and they might not be happy if Divock's in the starting 11, but the impact that players can have off the bench is significant as well. So yeah, I'm in favour of freshening it up as much as we possibly can. I think players like I think the difficulty for Minamino, Harvey Elliott, Oxlade, and Divock to a certain extent is that they haven't played much football, have they? So for them to come in and hit the ground running, I think will be difficult and maybe a little bit unfair. But then the likes of Milner, Curtis Jones, obviously Jota, Gomez, Tsimikas have all played more recently. So it's more likely to be them, I think, that come in than some of the ones that haven't played of late.
Absolutely. Hyder again, everybody, thank you for getting involved. Said Liverpool still playing for the quadruple, so I'm not sure how Liverpool can take their foot off the pedal in the slightest. I mean, Drew, this is where it's an interesting dilemma because these games are so close together. If Man City had won yesterday, the league is over, you'd have to say, wouldn't you? It would just be an insurmountable difference goals-wise. And there'll be no more mistakes allowed, and we'd have to overcome like 8, 9, 10 goals, whatever. But regardless of that, we still played on Saturday in an FA Cup final for 120 minutes. So does it make much difference at all? We have to freshen up the squad anyway. So I guess it's just a case of how far Klopp goes to freshen it up. And for you, what does that look like?
I think Neil hit the nail on the head with most of the names that he picked. I think Gomez is an easy slot in, Matip probably as well, Tsimikas. Maybe Konate is young enough to, keep in center back, play another game. Midfield's probably going to be Milner, Curtis Jones, and Naby Keita. Naby Keita got pulled off. Top 3, something like Firmino, Jota, Origi. I like that shout from Jay. I think it's not this case of Klopp taking things lightly or looking ahead. I think it's literally what you said. We played 120 minutes on Saturday, and you can't put those same starters in who played the whole match. Like that's, regardless of what games afterwards, they're not going to be, the fitness levels aren't going to be there. So the changes have to be made. And, I think, as Neil said, the players who came in have stepped in, put in minutes in their legs, and those have come in big wins for us through the season. So, anyone who steps on the field in place of our usual starting 11 knows what it means. And they're going to be wanting to fight for the result and give us that chance on the last day.
Yeah, I mean, just going back slightly, that's a great point that's made about the centre-backs, Jay. I mean, I think Joel Matip definitely comes in. I know it's often thought that, centre-backs, they run a lot less, so therefore they can handle more games. So with Konate, as Drew says, he's younger. potentially fitter than the others. Does he? I mean, we haven't got many other options, so surely he does start and play the whole game, doesn't he?
100% for me, mate. Like you said, he is a centre half, so he's not putting the yards in that a Diaz or a Thiago or Henderson's going to put in. So, and to be fair, Konate hasn't played a lot of football recently. He's come in for a couple of Champions League games. So yeah, I think he definitely starts. I think Drew's just said what the midfield will be, and I think it'll be the same. And then I think maybe Konate would have got rested if we had another option at right back, but we don't. So I think Gomez will play at right back, with Konate, Matip in the middle, and Tsimikas on the left. I think if we had another option at right back, Gomez would have probably started centre half with Matip, but there is no one else who can play right back, and there is no way that I'd be risking Trent Alexander-Arnold. Not a chance. We've already lost Fabinho. You lose both of them for the final, and my God, it changes the whole dynamic.
Speaking of that centre-back partnership, which I don't know how many times we would have seen it this season, Neil, of Konate and Matip, but I think seeing their performance in that final half an hour against Chelsea, that was almost a sigh of relief for me to see just how well that they dealt with Chelsea. I mean, obviously Matip was fresher, but Chelsea had brought players onto the pitch. They had fresh legs in attack, and not only the quality difference between Konate and Matip, who were brilliant, but Van Dijk is a whole nother level. But ultimately, we dealt with Chelsea very well, and I don't remember them having any clear chances in that extra time period. So is that the same for you? Does that give you sort of a sense of a bit more calmness and confidence, potentially being able to rest Van Dijk at a crucial point in the season?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, other players like Konate and Matip may step up in Van Dijk's absence, and they certainly did that during extra time on Saturday, because I thought they were outstanding as a pair. So Konate seems to be growing every time that he plays, and I think having the responsibility of Van Dijk not being around and needing to show leadership in the centre of defence alongside Matip will be good. And the fact that he stood up and he did it was important. I think with new signings, it takes time for not only the manager to trust players, but also for supporters to trust players. And maybe early in the season when you saw Konate thrown in, it was like, I'm not really sure about this. But now, if he gets selected, you just accept it and you're happy. And possibly he would be people's pick over Matip for a Champions League final spot. I think it's touch and go. So as I say, Van Dijk not being there is a blow, because you do miss certain things. But I also think we've now got the players that will step up in their absence and do a really good job. I think last year at Southampton, if I remember rightly, it was Fabinho and Henderson at centre half. So having Matip and Konate there seems to be much more satisfactory.
Doesn't last year just feel like a fever dream? Like, whenever I think about it or see highlights, I'm just like, that just didn't happen. It was horrible until Alisson got that goal against West Brom. But the rest of it was just atrocious. And I don't mean our players. I just mean, the whole COVID situation behind closed doors. It just wasn't what anybody particularly wanted. So we've covered the front three. We've covered the defence. I think that those two speak for themselves. Drew, I think you did go through the midfield, but just talk me through it again, who you'd expect to see in there. Because Gary's mentioned Henderson, but he didn't play the 420, but he still played... He played the 90 minutes, didn't he?
No, he played the 120, didn't he?
No, he played the 120. So surely Jordan Henderson can't be playing or starting,
Yeah.
can he?
No, he definitely can't. I think we've seen that Klopp I'm surprised he went the full 120. I think you've seen Klopp take him out in almost every game that he's started recently. You definitely don't want to lose him either with Fabinho's fitness in doubt for Champions League final. I know I just said we don't look ahead to those games. We need to win this one first, but we're talking about putting players on the pitch. So, Henderson having 120 minutes in his leg, he definitely should not be starting. Milner and Curtis Jones probably give us enough cover in that area, and defensively, and someone like Naby Keita can be relied on to link up with the attack. So I think that's probably the starting 11 there. Thiago's a bit elderly and not the fastest, so I wouldn't put him in too much stress, and he also gives away the worst fouls all the time.
Yeah.
So I would not want him in the midfield for Southampton with Ward-Prowse. So Jones,
exactly.
Milner, and Keita.
Yeah, so is that the one you'd go for, Jay? Milner, Keita, and Curtis Jones?
Yeah, I think so, mate. Ox hasn't even been getting in the squad, so I don't see how you can go from not being in the squad to getting a starting 11 place. I wouldn't be massively surprised if he'd put him in for a bit of energy, because obviously if Milner's playing, Jones isn't very quick, and Naby isn't really, but I do think the midfield, Drew said, will be. Like I said, I think it's a lot to ask someone who hasn't even made a squad to come in and start playing in the first team. And you've seen the impact Henderson had against Villa when he came off the bench to settle things down. So I think it'd be similar thinking. If the game's a bit erratic, we can always bring him on for the second half. So yeah, I think Drew's midfield should be the midfield.
Neil, just finally with you, because I think we've touched upon everything. Considering how many changes we're likely to make, considering we're very likely to miss Van Dijk, we will be missing Fabinho, Salah as well, and then other people will need to rotate. Will we see any sort of, however subtle, some sort of tactical tweak to try and deal with that, to try and cope? Because we're going to play a midfield three that probably hasn't played together that much, and the midfield is vital for any team. The defense is not going to be as familiar with each other because they're not playing regularly together, and the front three could be a little bit unmeshed, so who knows? Is there any chance that we see some sort of tactical tweak? Because whilst we've seen wide-scale changes like against Shrewsbury, this isn't the third round against Shrewsbury. This is the vital back end of the Premier League season. So is there anything changing, or does Klopp stick firm to what he knows?
I think if there's going to be a change, it's in the midfield. And I think a couple of guys, and I think Gary's kind of touched on it, and Halo as well, who's going to play in the six in the defensive midfield role? So typically Fabinho is the main man for that position, and Henderson is his number two. None of those three players that we've really spoken about, Keita, Milner or Jones, it's not really their role. I think Milner did play there in the first game of the season against Norwich, and I think Curtis Jones might have done it against Norwich in the Carabao Cup game that we won 3-0. So I think if we are going to see a change, it might be in midfield. And although saying that, of late, it's more often than not been Fabinho and Thiago, and then Keita in a more advanced position, and Henderson earlier in the season. So I just think if we're going for the three that the guys have suggested, then there's going to be a lot of discipline required by Curtis Jones and by James Milner in midfield. So it may be tactically different for those players. Do I think Liverpool will play much different? I don't. And I'm like Gary, I wouldn't be surprised to see Henderson in the team, if I'm honest. I know he's played 120 minutes, but if Fabinho is going to be fit for Sunday, is it a risk?
Henderson out, yeah.
Well, no,
because do you reckon he could bring Tyler Morton in? I know it's a risk, but he is a natural six, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think Neil just makes the point that, you know, we don't necessarily, I mean, Fabinho is the lighthouse and the destroyer of the team, but typically it is two of those midfielders tend to hold back a bit more. So I think Neil's right. It would be Milner and Jones would be tasked with working together much tighter, almost as their own double pivot kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe Morton makes the bench, who knows? But, you know, I think we always see at this point of the season, Klopp does tend to put his youth players back in the youth setup just to not burn them out or put them in too high pressure situations. But hey, we never know.
I think with Henderson as well. Sorry, just on
Yeah,
Henderson, I don't feel that in the 6 he's anywhere near as he's not covering the ground that he has been when he's played in that right-sided central midfield position. So I'm sure they'll be doing lots of medical tests today to see how the players have recovered. But he's really, if you were to say out of the players that are fit, he's really the only option to play in that 6 role that you would say, yeah, I fully trust him to do that. So the physio department will be advising, I'm sure. I think where they get into the red zone. So if he's anywhere near the red zone, he'll be ruled out. But if he's not, then I think he'll play.
Yeah, I think that just sums it up perfectly. It's 3 points and the safety of the players that's most important here. Just getting through, taking the title to the final game at the very least, and making sure that we don't add to that slightly growing injury list, although most who are on it don't seem too serious and should be fine for the Champions League. But anyway, I think we've covered most things for the Southampton game. We will, of course, have a live watch along for that tomorrow, followed by post-match reaction, and that'll all be on the LFC Transfer Room. So make sure you do stick around by pressing that subscribe button and by liking this video, please. Looks like there might be an agreement with Mbappe and Real Madrid, not Liverpool, but we can definitely have a look into that, Isla, and there'll be videos about that in the coming days, I'm sure. Drew, Jay, Neil, thank you very much for joining me for this Southampton match preview. This has been the LFC Transfer Room. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Take care.